Welcome to another episode of Cycles TV. Yeah, today is a special episode about natural gas. And for natural gas, I will use the natural gas to gold ratio. As in recent times, gold did a major move. And the gold to commodities ratio is always an interesting pair to watch, especially for cycles. And if you have not seen, I have put the links to the initial analysis of the natural gas to gold ratio here down below the link, because the cycles are running on rails on the natural gas to gold ratio. So therefore, please visit the initial analysis, which are updating today and revisiting also today. Before we do that, I want to highlight and point out that you have a chance in June to meet us at the Foundation for the Study of Cycles at our live conference in New York. So if you want not only to visit us at the Foundation, we have some very well known presenters there. So Larry Williams will be there for sure. Peter Eliades will be there. We have the son of Robert Prechter being with us at the conference, and even many more stars of the psychoanalysis community for the past century, I would say. So give us a chance. Please have a view here before we start. See you there. So, natural gas to gold ratio. Let me first explain what we're talking about before jumping into the psychoanalysis. So therefore, here's a simple chart. On the top, you see the gold to natural gas ratio, in this orange golden chart. And at the bottom of that chart, you will see the natural gas price, the futures price here seen. So, and if you see, and that's the relation we want to discuss and analysis further, if the gold to natural gas ratio makes an important top, this is always relating to a major bottom in the underlying natural gas future prices, and vice versa. If the ratio makes an important bottom, like seen here, the underlying natural gas gold price makes a top. And you can now visit more or less all turning points of the gold to natural gas ratio, seen here, making a top, major low in the future prices. And even if you zoom in more closely here, so even this is a relative top here, is exactly pointing to the bottom here in the natural gas price futures. So we have a clear relation, or we can use that ratio, and here the major top, again in the gold to natural gas ratio, correlation to a major bottom in the natural gas futures. So this is how you read the ratio, and this is important because we are not analyzing the pure price of the natural gas futures contract, which is underlying seasonality and other impacts anyhow. But the gold to natural gas price ratio is a kind of rhythm between those two commodities. So regardless maybe of the influence on specific natural gas or on specific gold valuations, the ratio between those two is always in a kind of rhythm. And those rhythms can be clearly seen on the chart. So making a top in the gold to price ratio, we see a low in the natural gas prices and vice versa. So what about detecting the rhythm of the gold to natural gas price ratio? If we can detect a rhythm, a cycle, which seems to be present in how those two commodities behave to each other, gold to natural gas. If there is a rhythm, I mean, that's the assumption we are working on, then maybe we can use that rhythm, that cycle in the ratio, to forecast the cyclic movement of the gold to natural gas ratio. Keep in mind, we are not projecting cycles in natural gas prices. We are projecting the rhythm between gold and natural gas. And if we can identify that rhythm, we can extrapolate that rhythm into the future to expect at which point in time the gold to natural gas ratio might change its trend, and therefore then derive projections about the natural gas price. So this is why we are analyzing the gold to natural gas price ratio. By the way, this is an often used methods for whatever commodity pairs analyzing in regards to the ratio of gold. So that's what we're doing now. Jumping now on the cycle analyzer, right? So let's start with that first. So I'm now switching to our cycle analyzer screen. Here, let's start with the weekly analysis. So we have the weekly ratio plotted here at the analyzer. And by the way, this is what you can do with any pre-processed data. So in that case, I've calculated the ratio and then imported the ratio into our cycle scanner to do the cycle analysis here on the weekly data first. So what we observe here is a cycle with a length of 213 weeks, which is a weekly cycle data, which is quite obvious standing out in the spectrum. I think you would quite follow me in regards to that's the most important cycle here, not explaining all the details. And it's quite interesting just looking at the rhythm of the previous just 4 iterations here. We see going back into the year of 2009, 2008, so about 15 years of weekly data. It's quite obvious. I mean, I think there's nothing more to explain that we have a nice cyclic behavior on weekly swings in the gold to natural gas ratio. By the way, looking at the recent situation here, so this cycle suggests the top of the ratio was coming in here in March, April 2024, and we are now in the downswing of that cycle into summer 2026. And keep in mind, a downswing of the gold to natural gas ratio could introduce that we are in an upswing, longer term upswing of the natural gas futures prices, where there's still room and way to go. So now if you think what has been the cycle 1 year back, so the video down below, there's the analysis done in 2024. And to show you the analysis, just what we've seen here. So the weekly cycle, from that analysis, you can review the video, you can read it on your own. As you see here, has been the long-term cycle 218 weeks. So today we are measuring 213 weeks, but I would count this is still the same nominal cycle, 218 weeks. You see it was February the 1st, 2024, with that analysis pointing to a major top in the gold to natural gas ratio here, March 2024, March 2024. So this is the same top in the ratio as we see it here on the weekly chart. So this is what has happened. So that cycle is still visible up to today. So even 1 year after the initial analysis, the cycle slightly shifted. So it has been reduced, the length 213, and that's the beauty of dynamic cycle analysis. So we clearly identify the current length and the current phase. also identifying the same nominal cycle active here, the same phasing, so still room to go to the downside. So we re-identified that important cycle on the natural gas, gold to natural gas ratio. That's the weekly. Now let's switch to the daily analysis and let's see where we are on the daily swings of those cycle. So jumping to a daily chart, this is the daily gold to natural gas ratio. Yeah, same procedure. I've built this data set up front. Here the spectrum at the bottom is a little bit more complicated to read, but a long story told short. You quickly see here's a 260, this is the 260 nominal days cycle, which is the most active here on the daily analysis, which we will now introduce here on that chart, which gives us an interesting peak projection upcoming now, end of April. So, or let's say we are in this topping window right now. I mean, we don't count it to the day, so we are quite in this upswing here. So while saying we have 260 nominal days cycle here active, let's do the same analysis. Let's go back to the analysis we did here in January 2024. So therefore, just getting back to that article, but so here's the daily chart. So here the daily cycle identified at that point in time 256 days. So I would conclude the same daily cycle is still active, which we already identified a year ago. So now we have passed another iteration of that cycle. By the way, the phase is also quite stable of that cycle. The projection back in 2024 was the projection of a top in March. This was around March 2024. The projection of the short-term daily cycle. Let's switch to our daily analysis, which was here. So this is exactly the March top back in, let's zoom out a little bit. So this is the March top of that cycle, or early April. Here we have the March topping here from that cycle, which was forecasted as a swing year ago. Then we went down, and now we are at the next possible top iteration of that daily and now updated 260 days cycle. So I would also count it the same nominal cycle. So we have still two dominant cycles active. The weekly cycle still very prominent, running on rails. The daily cycle, 260 days nominal cycle, also running on rails. On the ratio, on the gold to natural gas ratio, we will switch to the price chart just in a second. We could even go a little further and just shorten the amount of analysis for the daily data. So as you know, if we do a daily analysis, we will start with a short amount of data. If you're more into that cycle analysis, you should select major tops and bottoms in the past for your cycle analysis. So I have chosen to go those iterations of major swings here in that data to route the cycle analysis, but we can also just do the standard setting of 850 bars, which is just the current past analyzing this data. And this reveals a main cycle ranked at number 1 here with the highest stability here of 130. So now you could think, Lars, this is different. Yes and no, but if you are aware of the cycle harmonics, this is exactly half of the 260-day cycle. So we even have another shorter rhythm, 160 days active, 160 days, 260 days, and then the 213-week cycle. But the reason I'm showing you also this even shorter term cycle, it's also in the peaking formation. So that's what really comes up here. So the weekly 218, 213 week cycle is in the midst of its downward leg, still room to go, which has peaked March 2024. So now we see the daily 260-day cycle peaking, and we see the daily 136 days cycle peaking, which are the most important dominant cycles on the daily chart. Even very persistent if you compare to the original analysis here referenced down below. So those cycles are still persistent, are still dominant, are still there up to date. We can even monitor the shifts in phase and amplitude with the dynamic cycle analyzer, and you know where we are in that cycle today. So now let's move to the price chart. As I said, if we can find a rhythm in the ratio of gold to natural gas, which is the rhythm how gold and natural gas rebalance themselves in regards to if one commodity or the other is going to an extreme, it will balance itself to the ratio or normalize to the ratio, so extremes will be rebalanced. And then you can use one of those pairs, for example, here in that case, natural gas, to find the turns in the underlying commodity. So let's switch back to the price chart. And now let's add the cycles we just have detected to come into a trade decision processing here. So as said, on top we have the ratio. We now are aware of those ratios, and I will just now put in the cycles. By the way, I've not really fine-tuned them to the latest data. This is still, that's interesting, still the same rhythm from a year ago. Now just so we see the 218, now 213 weeks, and we see the 256 days, now 260 days cycle here overlaid at the ratio. So if you remember, and the important point here is we are looking at the cycles within cycles top alignment. So here is the weekly cycle, which topped already in March last year. Now on its downswing, we had the early top of the 260-day cycle, coming in just slightly before the major top last year. And now we have the second top, which slightly shifted, by the way, to the right, but that cycle is due now, as you have seen here. I can even switch back to the daily. So the daily suggests, no, that's the 160. So let's get back to having more data here. As said, I anchored the analysis to have more repetitions here in that data, where we now see here clearly the 260, here the 260, and that's what I wanted to showcase here. The 260 is now for the upcoming high. So this is the phase shift. You could also adjust. This was the initial projection here. So this slightly shifted to the right, but I mean, let's not become overly detailed here. But this is a top within the top here. And if you remember, even the 160-day cycle is topping. So we have really still a situation where 3 major cycles are in the topping formation on the ratio. Okay, just keep that in mind. So now let's have a look to previous swings in the data series. So first, going back and analyzing a little bit if we can identify those swings here in the underlying price of the futures here. So here's the previous iteration of that cycle where we had both major cycles topping here, where we had the previous final low in natural gas prices. And now I've just plotted here with those arrows, the short-term swings of the shorter cycle here. So you see how the rhythm, we are in downswing, so we are in the major upswing of natural gas, and even the shorter rhythm has helped to identify the major swings. So here we reversed to the upside of the underlying gold to natural gas ratio, which means we should come into a downswing of natural gas, and then we identify even the short-term swings here. This has been the forecasted bottom in natural gas back in January 2024, trading at 160, 150. So this was the forecasted error here. We are now 350, close to 4. What I want to tell you is here that now we're on another bottoming situation. So even though natural gas has rallied from that major peak here, those interims cycles here will now just give us confirmation this position here where we are now is exactly this position here as we had in the iteration before. Yeah? So here the previous upward cycle here in the ratio, yeah, just resulted in a more or less sideways movement in the underlying natural gas futures before the next huge upswing started. And this point here is exactly where we are now, here. So here would be this green dot. So in that case, we have even seen stronger move of natural gas, not sideways. So this was a sideways move, yeah, or let's zoom in. I mean, maybe could draw a line there, but this was not really a, you could count it again as a sideways move here, but now the next major upswing phase is expected to start as it was exactly at this point here, the next upswing phase, which was this down move, yeah, in the center of the longer term downswing wave. So that phase here was more or less the strongest, and we are now exactly approaching that phase here, another downswing phase in the gold to natural gas ratio, long term, short term, which, if history repeats, and that's always the if, no one knows if history will repeat. However, we had quite a good year of trading that cycle for over a year now. It was initially presented here on the channel, if you have followed. So that's the current status on that cycle. And let's monitor how the futures might react to that situation, as gold is currently trading at a very interesting high ratios. So it would be, again, time for natural gas to follow up what gold did already, if the ratio will stay, and especially the swings and rhythm in that ratio will repeat again. That's it for today. I mean, I see just 2 topics on the chat section. Franz, Dandy, Alagri. I mean, these are just follow-up questions. So if you are a member at the foundation with the higher grades in our membership level, this will allow you also access to some additional indicators, which takes some time here to process everything, as we are a non-profit. Don't expect that we have a huge team behind, so you need to be patient with us before we get everything processed. But I will get back to your questions, Alagri and Dandy and Franz, if that would be possible. So I would count it a cycle analysis for today. I hope you liked the gold to natural gas ratio analysis. Please subscribe, like the channel, tell your friends, visit us in New York in June, or at least join me next week, Monday, same time, same place. See you.